Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, our show about VR, and a special episode this week because we're on location, as you can see, at Oculus Connect 5.
It's the once-a-year event. Norm's been to all 5 of them now. I've only been to 3, but I love this event. I look forward to it every year, and this year we had a great new hardware announcement.
Yeah, we were all anticipating this, the announcement for what we previously knew as Oculus Santa Cruz, which I don't think we'll ever stop calling it that.
Nope, it's hard.
But Oculus and Facebook have announced it's the Oculus Quest standalone VR headset. 6 degrees of freedom, you can move around. Completes their first generation of VR headsets.
That's what they're saying. And I think it's really important that you explain this, what 6 degrees means, because I think there are still some people out there who aren't as deep into VR as we are. 6 degrees means basically you don't just get to look around as you do in the Oculus Go. You get to move around. You can walk around your room as you can with the Oculus Rift. And that goes for the controllers as well. They are tracked in 6 degrees all around your space. So you have essentially a form of hand presence in virtual reality.
It's parity with what we've expected from the Rift.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. But inside-out tracking, completely tetherless. It has a computer built into it. You do not hook it up to a computer. It is an all-in-one device.
So what Oculus has announced so far is that this is a $400 standalone VR headset starting at $400 for their base SKU, although we expect maybe future SKUs.
We do.
And it will come out in the spring with a bunch of games from developers who may have developer units right now. Over 50 titles, some of which will be new titles, some of which will be ports from existing Rift games.
And they're saying that they want all Rift games going forward to be compatible not just with Rift 2 eventually someday, but also as many as possible to be compatible with this, because the touch controllers, and they're calling them touch controllers, they have parity. They are compatible with one another.
People here at Oculus Connect 5 are able to play with the Quest, get some hands-on time. We got some hands-on time too, but before we get to our impressions, let's jump to an interview that we did with Sean Liu, who's the product manager over at Oculus across their hardware. So now we're joined, very excited to be joined, and talking finally on camera with Sean Liu, product manager of hardware at Oculus for Oculus Go, and now we know it's called Quest.
Yeah, it's an exciting day.
Yeah, so I guess where do we want to begin?
So we played with Santa Cruz, right?
Yeah.
Last year, and I'm still trying to switch gears to Quest.
Me too.
Oculus Quest. So what's changed over the past year, if anything? Maybe you've just learned how to mass produce it.
No, we've actually been doing a lot of different things with Oculus Quest. So Project Santa Cruz was a really early prototype. We've been iterating across the hardware, the software, the computer vision, and just maturing the product end to end. And it's little things, for instance, I have a flatter nose, and so getting the facial interface to feel right for me is much different than, say, for someone else. And so we want the device to work for all different kinds of people, across all different kinds of spaces. So we've been working a lot on getting it ready.
You guys from the beginning knew that you wanted something wireless, self-contained. I think I remember at the very first Santa Cruz prototype sneak peek I saw, it was literally what looked like a system-on-a-chip board on the back of a headset. Did you know back then what type of compute power you'd be working with and what would work in a mobile, portable, 6-stop headset?
Yeah, so for us, a lot of the early pillars were laid out back then. We knew we wanted something that was all-in-one, that was untethered and gave you this sense of freedom. We knew that we wanted to take a lot of the best learnings from Rift and bring it to this all-in-one form factor. So that was our really early days. It was trying to do a proof of concept to prove out that inside-out tracking, which has now evolved into Oculus Insight, that all of that could come together in one device.
Did you know that Inside Out would even work on that type of compute with those type of cameras?
No. This has been a long ways coming, where we put a lot of research in from Facebook Reality Labs with our core technology teams and maturing it within product. It's been a really long journey where we've put a lot of effort in to make it all come together.
The keynote was really interesting, but it didn't list many tech specs. So let me at least ask you.
Ask away.
So you mentioned that it has the same lenses as the Go.
Yes.
Can we assume the same displays?
It is not the same display.
It's not the same display?
Yeah,
okay.
So it's a new display. These are our highest resolution yet. Per eye, it's 1600 by 1440 pixels. It's also mirrors Rift style, where you can actually adjust the lens distance.
Right.
So it has an IPD adjust on the device. So it's different panels, different resolution, but same.
Is it RGB
optics.
stripe or is it pentile?
It's an OLED.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I mean, great blacks then, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
great blacks, great contrast.
What about processor?
It's a Qualcomm Snapdragon 835.
So pushing out more pixels and doing a little more computing because of the Inside Out.
Yeah.
Are there subprocessors for that Inside Out?
No, it's just the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835. We've partnered a lot with Qualcomm. We've worked internally a lot, really to get the end-to-end stack to be great. So we've worked on optimizing all of our tracking algorithms, making sure we free up enough compute for developers, and we apply a lot of the same learning. So again, we're going to have all of the chromatic aberration correction now that we just announced for Oculus Go. That'll also be in Oculus Quest. We'll do all the fixed foveated rendering. This is going to be running at 72 Hertz. So because we own that stack end to end, we think we can do a lot with it.
Inside Out, I really want to talk about because there are a lot of ways people have done it. From very basic, knowing there's a marker in the room,
Totally.
to the way that Steam VR does it with their lasers. Here, it's theoretically for any type of room. You guys have talked about experimenting with hundreds of rooms. How does that mapping work, and how expansive is it, and what type of environments can we use this in?
Totally. So we're now calling the tracking system and Oculus Guardian, all of that together is called Oculus Insight. So we're just trying to give it a name for an end-to-end. It works across a whole range of different environments. The easiest way to think about this is just with our general eyes. It's actually how our sensors work too. So if it's bright enough to read a book, then we want it to be able to track. And to track across all different kinds of indoor environments. And the way that it works is it looks for, say, edges and other features in the environment, and then it builds up a point cloud, and then we localize against that point cloud to know where we are in that space.
And it uses visible light to do that edge
That's
detection,
right,
not
visible
infrared.
light. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Even with the controllers.
Well, the controllers are on a different spectrum, so those are using IR, similar to Oculus Touch for Rift.
It's a mix of different types of lenses, and because some cameras, some sensor will be better in monochrome and high frame rate and global shutter and that kind of stuff. So you're mixing even the type of cameras.
A ton of work of optimization across that system.
I noticed on the headset you can actually see one of the projectors. Something is lit in the corner of one of those, what I thought was strictly a camera, but there's some light coming out of it. Is that not a part of the tracking system?
No, that should just be our LED status system. So we've got two LEDs. One of them is for a power, just like the device is on or not. The other is actually tied to our Oculus Insight tracking system. So if the sensors are on and looking, then that light also turns on.
Got it. And I noticed on the side, it looks like a USB-C port?
Yes,
is that
for charging.
For charging.
That's right.
Also data transfer?
You can transfer files, so you can load your local media files if you want to take them with you on the go.
Does that behave like the Go does, where it shows up as a drive and you would just drag it over there?
So similar. You can just transfer files, just through like the Android file transfer system.
But now at USB-C speeds.
Yes, that's right.
Great.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know these are prototypes right now, but I also noticed two what looks like analog headphone jacks, one on either side. What's the thinking behind that?
We do have a lot of audio solutions that are up and coming. You can take a few guesses. Yeah.
But those will both theoretically be there in the final product.
That's correct. They will both be there. Yeah.
Very interesting.
For now, you can plug in a headphone jack into either side, and it'll just work.
I've got to ask you about this arena scale.
Yes.
Dead and buried that you guys have set up here. 4,000 square feet.
It's pretty cool.
I asked you before we started shooting here if you were even able to test that scale on your campus, and you said you got maybe 70% there.
Yeah.
How do you set that up? How is that even, is that something that is very specifically done for this experience right here? How is that done? How do you set up an arena scale environment like that?
Yeah, so here at Oculus Connect, we've got the Innovation Lounge, and that area is really to show off the integration of a lot of new future-looking technologies. So these are things that are coming out, say in like the 5-year time frame, and we're trying different things to see what's really cool and what's exciting. For this in particular, we think that location-based entertainment can benefit a lot from it. So it's not something that we plan to release at ship for general consumers. It's more for pushing innovation, seeing what's possible, and what creative things you can do with the device in the long run.
It is using Quest.
It is using Oculus Quest,
And
that's right.
it's essentially an elaborate Guardian system, I would imagine. Is that how it's kind of set up?
It's set up the tracking system is actually the same one. It's a very robust tracking system. But we do a lot with the content to really make it shine in this local multiplayer system with 6 people all at once. So
right.
there's
That's
a
the
lot
interesting
of cool
thing. It's
things.
local,
Yeah,
right? Because
that's exactly
theoretically, the consumers, like Jeremy and I, will be playing. We might play Dead and Buried, but we'll be in our own homes and share. But they're actually sharing a physical space with physical objects.
That's exactly right.
And are you encouraging developers to develop for that for consumer space?
In 5 years.
It's a longer term thing, and it's more of an innovation play.
Yeah.
Got it.
Really proving out, it's the same hardware we're trying to show is if you push on the software and you push on the technology, you can do pretty magical, incredible things. To productize something has a lot of different things and considerations you'd have to take into account. So here it's really just on the innovation front, and then working probably with location-based entertainment to see what's possible.
I guess the tennis, then
Yeah.
that is that still local? Or is that just the way it's set up?
That's just the way it's set up, so you can see it here for players.
But that would work.
It would be a multiplayer game, yeah.
Got
So
it.
I would play across the continent with you guys.
Oh, very cool. How are ways you're testing just the fidelity of the inside out, the multi-room tracking, for example, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that it's retaining geometry for my different spaces that I would use this in, or are we talking about rooms connected with hallways?
Oh, it's more for, if I set up the device, we have a really quick and easy Oculus Guardian setup. But let's say I set it up in my living room. When I put the headset back on, if I'm still in the same living room, I don't have to set up the Guardian system again.
Got it.
So that's what we mean by that front.
And how big can a Guardian system be? Can it be
Yeah.
my whole floor of my house? I mean, it can obviously be 4,000 square feet.
Yeah, the challenge here is actually on how you develop content. So we want to make sure that for a content developer, you have a general, easy set of expectations for how consumers will be using the device. So right now we're really thinking, we're sort of thinking about it a little bit beyond room scale. So it's really a difference in thinking on 2 fronts. One is you could literally take the whole room scale and even bigger, all the way up to the Dead and Buried arena size. But we're really encouraging you to stay within, a general room scale environment. But the second thing that's different for content developers is you're untethered. And developing for that, where you have truly a full 360 motion, you're not concerned about getting caught up in a cable or tripping or anything. That's a little bit different for how you think about content.
Definitely.
So that's another dimension in which it's beyond room scale.
And will the Guardian system be strictly walls, or will it also detect objects such as tables and things?
It's actually a manual setup. So when you put on the device for the first time in a room, you'll set up the Guardian boundary system, very similar to how it's done on Rift today.
So it is a boundary. You can't set up
correct.
obstacles in the
That's
middle
correct.
of the room. Okay.
Yeah.
How long are you expecting people to use this for? What's the battery life that you've optimized for?
Yeah, well, we're thinking about this a lot from the content development side. So we're still working on the content slate and what that will look like. A lot of those questions about battery life will be tied to what content comes on the platform. So we'll have more details to share with the content lineup next year.
Cool. And springtime, so we're saying...
Spring next year, yeah.
Okay.
We're excited for it.
Super. Oh, one more question.
Yes,
we saw
please.
briefly in the keynote some pass-through capabilities, presumably with Quest. Outlining, seeing to see your hands.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that? And is that something that consumers will see either natively in something you've built or in developers?
Is it stereo? The pass-through?
In that case, because we're basically using the same 4 sensors for Oculus Insight, was generating that footage that Boz showed in the keynote. This is an element that, again, falls in that innovation lounge where we think about the future and where this device can go. And we think that mixed reality plays a pretty critical role as you think about how do you defy distance, how do you bridge people and bring them together and really connect in VR, in AR, all the way out in the future. Mixed reality is a critical piece of that. So that was a demo that was showing off what's possible, even with the hardware that's going to be available very soon, and how far you can take it. It's an exciting future.
And it could be something even for comfort that we may see on the hardware people buy next year, upgraded down the line.
I'll take all the ideas for product.
Don't want to put those words in your mouth. All right, very cool. Thank you so much, Sean. It's great to
Thank
chat
you so
with
much, Norman. Thanks,
Sean.
Jeremy.
All All right, Jeremy. So chatting with Sean, we learned quite a bit, actually. They were
Yes.
pretty forthcoming about what's inside the Quest.
It's the new open Oculus. I love it.
So we expected this to have some similarities with the Oculus Go in terms of
Right,
the
it's a
optics.
portable device.
Exactly, and it runs on a system on a chip, a mobile processor, but it seems to be much more advanced. Start with the display. They're using the Fresnel lenses that were in the Go,
Right.
But
Which are quite good. Like they do give you a wide, sweet spot, and they're Fresnel lenses, but they do a good job.
Yep, but behind those lenses are now a high resolution display.
Higher
much
than Oculus has ever done.
You're right. Rift actually has the lowest resolution display now.
It's true.
Across its Rift. Go, which had a single 2560 by 1440 panel, LCD, and now we're back to OLED with 2 displays because they also have IPD adjustment. You can move the displays for comfort to match the distance between your eyes.
Right, and so to be clear about Sean's response to me, is it an RGB stripe or is it
Pentile.
Pentile? It is in fact Pentile.
That's
OLED
right.
displays are, and so
Yep.
that's what you're going to get. It's much like the display that we have on the Rift right now, not like the Go.
Although we did our first Quest demo before we knew the specs, and it's lost in the content anyway. Right, like I was trying to scrutinize the pixels, but
Yeah.
I was lost in the content, and it's not a world-changing amount of resolution difference.
Right.
Text
It
is
does-
readable. That's
Yes.
good enough.
And it does run at 72 hertz, though, like the Go display does.
That's
as well.
right.
Yeah.
Now, running that display is a mobile processor, and it's from Qualcomm. It's the 835 Snapdragon, which, if you follow smartphones, is last year's high-end chipset.
Last year's high-end. Yeah, right. So it's no longer the high-end. The
Right.
new high-end is the 845, and I know a lot of people on Reddit and elsewhere were hoping that maybe they'd get the latest, greatest flagship, but you're not going to get that at $399, I don't think.
Sure.
And the 835 is considerably more powerful than the 821, which
Yeah.
powers the Oculus Go.
That's right, because this one runs with a 10 nanometer process, which means it's not only like 27% faster, but also it's like 40% more power efficient.
Yeah.
Which you're going to need that if you're pushing all those pixels and also processing the inside
All
out
of the
tracking.
inside-out stuff. I was surprised that they didn't have any kind of intermediate processor for that. That's a lot for that one processor to handle. But we've played in the games here, which are still 6 months out from release, and they're solid. Like it's keeping frame rate, and
Yep.
the graphics are good.
Yep. So let's talk about that tracking experience,
Yeah.
because some of the games here, one game we're in a small room and just using stick control. There's one game here, tennis game, where you have a little bit more movement. And then there's a game, Dead and Buried, an experimental game, which was 4,000 square feet
Yes.
of play space.
Basically a location-based experience.
Yeah. The inside-out tracking for your head, great. Like
Sure.
it was seamless. It was like the experience I would have with the Rift.
And why wouldn't it be? Because it's always seeing things. As long as you have something in the environment that the cameras can latch onto, contrasty things, something on the wall, a rug. I wonder what this might be like in a glass room or a reflective room or a room that's all white.
A lot of living rooms have windows.
Exactly. I wonder if there will be issues with that and people will have to cover those. Of course, we don't have the opportunity to test that yet.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If you look here, like everywhere there's high contrast. Like the play spaces they've set up
Yeah.
here not only have hard edges, but like white tape on the ground. And
But last year we had a similar experience, and they wouldn't let anybody within your tracked area. This year, there's always an assistant walking
Right.
around that space with you, so they at least trust it more than they did last year.
Totally. Let's start. What game do you want to start with?
Well, it's hard not to start with the awesome experience, which was the 6-player Dead and Buried. I mean, that's a different level kind of experience, and this is not something that they will support out of the gate. This is something that may be years away, but it proves that you can have multiple people sharing a same space.
Yep.
Right? I mean, how they're doing that, it seems like there's a dedicated server involved. This is not a peer-to-peer, game that's being played between the headsets strictly.
Right.
But they also incorporated an iPad into this experience, which is just that's pretty cool. I mean, you could imagine that iPad that's walking around in this 3D space also being a player, having some sort of agency in that space, dropping med packs or
And previously, that type of mixed reality, to even do that, you would need to have tracking on your camera. Here, because it's a mobile game that's running essentially, a mobile chipset game running on the headset, they can run a version of that game on iOS, on their tablet.
if it's Unity, it already runs. Yeah.
And with a single camera, using something like ARKit, track the same space, and then map that same data on top.
Yeah, and what that tells me is that developers, if they're clever enough, they won't need Oculus support to make that kind of thing happen.
Right.
You could do that if you write your own server and you have your own tech, and you want to go the extra mile and create like a kind of a location-based experience. Maybe in your basement, you could potentially do that.
Right, and in that Denbury experience, while there were 6 players, they did split us into 2 sides. So we weren't running into each other. And even though we were playing on the same team, we weren't really communicating with each other. The real benefit was that we had this volume, this square footage of being able to run around between these physical boxes that they had set up. Now, I have no idea whether these boxes were, actually being tracked in real time, or just the developers said, here's where a box should be, let's put a box here.
And hope it doesn't move.
And hope it doesn't move.
Right, which that's my assumption. Like that would be the easiest way to do it, certainly not the most flexible.
Right.
I was glad to see Superhot here. Superhot is a game that we have already a wealth of experience with, playing on first the PC and then in VR. But it had been more of a standing experience where you're moving and dodging, and this is a game many people already are familiar with. If you're not, it's a game where when you move, the time transpires in the game world. But now, they're really saying you can not just dodge your body, you can't just lean, but walk around.
Right, and that's something that, as someone who plays a lot of Superhot, I wasn't prepared for. My body didn't naturally do that.
Yeah.
Because Superhot on the Rift is a 360 standing experience. You're encouraged to turn around, but not walk around.
Exactly.
So it took me a few minutes into the game where I realized, well, I don't need to wait for the bad guys to come to me.
Yeah.
I can run up to them.
Yeah, and you can dodge bullets by continually walking around in a circle or something like that.
Yeah.
And it does. At first, I was afraid it would make the game easier, but they've done a nice job in preparing the game for that circumstance. And it actually is just a lot more fun because now I'm moving around and I have to move a little bit faster in order to dodge those bullets, and that causes time to move faster, and it's kind of a fun gameplay loop.
I will say, in terms of the tracking fidelity, now I know this is still not finished hardware, not finished software.
Yeah.
It was good, but I did notice some drift on my controller.
Headset-wise or controllers?
Controller-wise.
Yeah.
And I was trying to push the limits of the headset, putting the controller behind myself, and it wouldn't track when it would be behind myself.
Right.
And when I snapped my head, turned around to look at the controller, it would then re-render and pop back into the location where it then saw the controller, which is something we've experienced with this type of inside-out tracking with the Windows Mixed Reality headsets.
And this last year when we tried the prototypes. The reason why that's happening is the headset has 4 cameras on the front of the headset only. There's nothing on the back. Now the Rift has IR LEDs on the back for this reason. Like they know that you want to be able to track the back of the head. I think for whatever reason, maybe it's price point or maybe it's just, you don't often need those rear trackers. They didn't go with it for this. I'm with you, whereas I kind of wish they did. I'm a little concerned about, can you port something like Echo Arena to this? Because if you're holding on to the wall back here and I'm looking forward, I can't push off and propel myself through space because that hand is no longer positionally tracked.
Or the developers need to approximate that movement just with accelerometer data.
And can that be done?
Can that be done with their IK model?
That said, we played a tennis game here. What's it called? Project Tennis Scramble. And I was quite surprised by the amount of tracking they were doing that this headset was not seeing. Like I was doing around the back hits. What? And I was doing like between the leg things. There's no way that this headset was seeing that. So there might be something to what you said. You might be able to get away with accelerometer tracking more than I suspect.
And that tennis game was one that required fast movement. You're swinging those controllers really quickly, which tells me that the refresh rates on these 4 cameras are very fast shutter. They're tracking this and they're approximating the movement, they're projecting forward, and they have to be reliable that way. Yeah,
the tennis game is interesting too because they allow for different size spaces, right? So it's a multiplayer game, 1v1, and you might be in your living room and I might be in mine. Your living room is not going to be the same size as mine. So, but I can't tell that. To me, it looks like you have the full tennis court. And if you walk to the edge of your space, you'll go on my screen to the edge of the tennis court. And so where I hit the ball to you isn't necessarily where you see the ball hit.
So you have to fake some of it.
They do. They fake it, but it's completely convincing. Like it's not even if we tried to reach out and give each other a high five, we'd probably miss. But that never happens. We're just a matter of getting the ball to the right spot.
Right. And that's a game where I really hustled also. I was running, going back and forth. I had the court.
You had full court,
I had full court. And you could play this on an empty tennis court.
I asked them if that was possible. They said 100%. And you would run to the edge of the court and you would see your opponent do that.
That really showed that this needs to be something that will stay on your head. So
Yeah.
ergonomically, the Quest also is a little more sturdy than
Yeah.
on the Go. It's a semi-rigid head strap, a little more like a flexible rubber.
Yeah.
And
Much more so than the Go.
Yes, you can't remove the top strap.
Right.
It's closer to the Rift design in terms of having the Velcro and the rigid
Yeah.
baseball cap stretchiness on the front. And you really need to cup the back of your head for it to feel stable.
You were saying that you feel like the headset is a little heavier than you
Immediately noticeable.
were
than the Go.
expecting than the Go, certainly.
I've been using the Go, and the Go is just so light.
Yeah.
Easy lean back experiences. My neck didn't strain from using the Quest, but it is heavier. I can't tell if it's heavier than the Rift or not.
Right.
But it is, it's a lot of hardware. It's all the hardware.
It's
in there.
cameras and a computer. I was surprised by how light it was. So we had a different kind of experience with that. Maybe it was because that rigid head strap. That's something when I put on the Go, I immediately wanted. And so
Right.
I'm glad that they incorporated that here. I think that helps to offset any added weight that it has.
Yeah. The last game we played was a horror game called
Yeah.
Face Your Fears 2.
This is a game probably neither one of us would have played unless we were forced to by some PR people.
Right. And interestingly, this is a game where we didn't have a lot of space to actually physically move around, and we used the thumbstick for moving.
Yeah, and frankly, I think the game could have pushed it a little harder. I think you could walk through that space and retain comfort with a faster motion. Then again, they want the slow pace, so maybe that's a part of the gameplay design. But it also, that was my first, I think that was the first time that we used the device, and I got to see what the graphic fidelity would be like, and I was pleasantly surprised with that. It's not a game that I think particularly lends itself to the Quest because the world is so much larger than any play space would logically be, reasonably be, that you end up using the stick to move anyway.
Well, I think the developers have to design experiences in that make use of room scale. So one of the things, I wish we could show you this, we couldn't capture it, but one of the things you do in this game is you walk inside a shack, like a tool shed, for example. And in the tool shed, that would approximately be like a room scale style, escape room style experience where you're looking for items. And so while you can have a big open world adventure game, all the dexterity is done on smaller spaces.
Of course, they have to make sure by some developer magic that you are standing in the right spot in the real world.
That's right.
That leaves the correct space in front of you to encompass that game world, right?
Yeah. There was one near the end of this demo. There was a door in a mansion that you're supposed to walk through, and if you physically try to walk through it, they'll pop you back out because they want you to use the thumbstick to walk through it, so they know you're actually ready to that point to trigger the scare.
Job Simulator is the de facto original room scale game in my mind, and one of the most successful VR games because it was very successfully room scale, and you could walk around the kitchen or whatever job you were working in, and you never went outside those boundaries. You were always you're always restricted to the size of whatever the Vive room scale restriction was. Now you're free of that, right? With the Quest, they're calling it potentially arena scale, right? And the Dead and Buried demo certainly speaks to that. What are the experiences going to be like that developers now make, and what restrictions are they going to assume we have in terms of space? I mean, that's going to be interesting to watch.
I think it's the same type of problems that AR developers are working through, because AR developers have to design experiences that work on every single type of environment, starting with indoors and also large areas and outdoors. And this leads to what Michael Abrash was saying, was both on the technology side, the things that they're learning in AR actually will help VR, the actual hardware itself. And Michael Abrash ended the keynote this morning with his projections forward, and so his predictions as to where VR tech will be
and a
in 5 years.
revisit of his previous predictions.
Some
things he feels he was a little bullish on, some things a little too bearish, but in general he was pretty spot on. I'm excited for the foveated rendering, for instance. They showed a internal tech demo experiment that they've done where with a headset that clearly has foveated rendering, which is not one that Oculus currently makes, but where your eye will actually see, where your eye is looking, that will be highly resolved. There'll be a lot of pixels dedicated there. Everywhere else, there'll be fewer pixels. But what was interesting is they're going to rely on AI, essentially,
deep learning,
to fill in the gaps, to have rendered pixels, but then where they're missing, the deep learning will fill them in, and it looks fine. It doesn't even have to look as good as it probably does, because it's just your blurry peripheral vision that's seeing them.
And they're only rendering 20% of the actual image. and that's where your eyes are looking.
Right.
It's like if you use Adobe Photoshop and there's content-aware fill,
Yeah.
that feature, it's like doing that except with more analysis
Right.
and doing it at like 90 FPS theoretically.
For me, it was like, if you guys remember the NVIDIA announcement of the new 2080 cards that came out, they're talking about similar technology where
For upsampling.
For upsampling, where you will have a slower res image and deep learning will be able to create pixels where there weren't and give you a higher resolution image.
Yeah.
The problem for me with that is I'm seeing all those pixels, like possibly in any time, and I want those pixels to be real. It seems like NVIDIA did a great job with that. For me, with Oculus, with VR, with foveated rendering, I don't have that problem whatsoever because those pixels that are being manipulated and filled in, you're not really looking at them. You're seeing them in your peripheral vision.
Yeah. So we have high hopes for VR. They seem very optimistic. The future looks bright.
I sure hope
is
we
what
have. Yeah,
Michael
absolutely.
Abe said. We're getting varifocal lenses. They think they can go real wide field of view. It's interesting to hear them talk about the difference between Fresnel lenses and pancake lenses, and even using waveguides, something we've talked about in terms of augmented reality headsets and potentially putting those in virtual reality headsets. So the Rift, and it is really the first generation, the Rift, the Quest, and the Go.
Yeah.
And they are going to put a lot of money into developing the hardware.
Which tells me this is the last year of the first generation. And next year, Zuckerberg already came out on stage and referenced the Rift 2, and that was the last we heard of it today. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're standing here next year and that's the news. I mean, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, it'd be very exciting. And between now and then, we'll have the Quest to go play and test.
Yeah, at least in 6 months or so. They're saying spring release time for that. I hope that that's sometime in the first 3 months.
Yeah. If you have questions about the Oculus Quest, put some of the questions or comments below. We'll go check with Oculus and try to get those answered. And thanks for watching as always. We'll see you next time with more coverage from Oculus Connect 5.
Bye.